Cool. Okay, well, welcome everybody to Melbourne CocoaHeads number 140. I'm not quite sure why we keep counting them, but it's impressive nonetheless to sort of see how far we've gotten in the last 10 years or so. Welcome to CocoaHeads. For those of you who haven't been here before or seen any of these live streaming broadcasts, we have a number of channels that you can interact with the community with. We have Melbourne CocoaHeads website. Of course, we have the Meetup site as well, which a lot of you have RSVP'd to already. We have a Slack that quite a few of us are on, and I'd encourage everybody to jump on there and share their thoughts and comments on the #Meetup channel for this particular meetup. We've got the Twitter account, Melbourne Coco, and the YouTube channel as well. Now, these streams will be recorded and posted up to YouTube at some point after this. Tonight, we've got some fantastic talks lined up. First up, we've got Franklin giving us a talk about his experience doing a boot camp. After him, we'll have Oliver joining us, showing us a new tool that we've been developing at Itty Bitty Apps to help with automated deployments and configuration for App Store Connect applications and all that kind of stuff. Rob's going to join us then after that and show us some cool things he's been doing with feature flags. Of course, we're not the only community around here in Australia, and there are a bunch of others around the country, in particular Sydney CocoaHeads and the Google Developer Group in Melbourne as well, our counterparts on the Android side. I know we've been getting a lot of people having a look at the stream and kind of chipping in their conversations. It's actually been really nice over the last couple of months. I think our community kind of feels as though it's grown just because even though we're all locked down, people can kind of jump online and see these streams as they're happening. So it's really nice to sort of see the community expanding. In terms of Slack, if you're not already on Slack, get over there now if you're watching and hit up the Meetup channel. That's where everybody's supposedly there right now saying what a great job Sean's been doing. I'm sure they're saying a lot of other things as well. Just ignore all those things. And also it's a place where you can, put your comments about the talks or ask questions, and the presenters will hopefully get back to you at some point and might be able to answer your questions there. Other channels that you might want to check out as well is the volunteers channel. If you'd like to help out with Melbourne CocoaHeads in any form of organisation, be most welcome. So go there and sign up, and we can always use more people and more help. We also have a jobs channel as well. If you're looking for work or if you're looking to hire people, you can get on there and post jobs that you have available. And if you'd like to talk, we have a speakers channel as well, where you can chip in your own ideas about talks that you'd like to see, or you can suggest talks that you might want to do. As a community, we also have a code of conduct, and we want to make sure that this is a safe and welcoming and inclusive community that we're all part of. If you see anything untoward or anything that you think needs to be reported, there's a couple of channels down there below that you can reach out to and let us know. So, every month we like to sort of celebrate all the great work that people do, and I think a lot of shipping apps that don't get talked about much, or we spend a lot of time on apps and don't maybe celebrate them enough as we should. So I reached out to the community over the last week and asked who had shipped apps. Mark Turnip mentioned that he had released a PBS app. He's been spending his COVID time productively. The PBS app allows you to listen to radio shows from a local Melbourne radio station. Also, Michael Page chipped in and said that he had shipped an app called Discounts. Michael's from Adelaide, but he chipped in to this segment for Melbourne CocoaHeads. What's he saying here? Discounts is a handy app for calculating your shopping list totals. So go check that out. It's looking pretty sweet. Michael Tegas mentioned that he had released focused work, which is an app that helps you focus and structure your time effectively, which is something I could definitely do with. And Ron mentioned that the team at Counter, I don't think Ron builds the whole app, but he mentioned that they'd actually gone through and done a major release. In this release, they've entirely redone the onboarding experience. They've got custom alerts through the app, and they've updated some of the collection views to use compositional layouts in a few places. So if you've got any questions about his experience with that, feel free to hit him up on Slack. And if you've shipped something that you'd like to tell us about, jump on Slack and let us know. We'd love to hear about it. This one's a bit awkward for me, but being the CEO of Itty Bitty Apps, but I'd like to welcome our gold sponsors, Itty Bitty Apps, fantastic company for supporting the community. We've actually been a long-term supporter of CocoaHeads. I ran CocoaHeads for a few years, but it's actually really nice. I'll take the opportunity to sort of thank the committee that's formed around the CocoaHeads community now. There's probably too many names to mention, but in particular, Rob, Hugh, and Mike, Luke Tupper, Nabila. There's a whole lot of Ron, I think, is on the committee as well. There's a whole lot of people that help out with Melbourne CocoaHeads, and I'd just like to give a shout out to them as well. Silver sponsors, we have Latitude Financial, REA Group, and Cognizant. So we'd like to thank them for their support. If you see any of those products or apps out there, go check them out. So now I'm going to hand over to Franklin. He's going to give us a bit of a rundown of his experience doing an iOS bootcamp. I think, as you know, a lot of us are experienced iOS developers. It's often hard to kind of put yourself back in that in those early days of learning things for the first time. So it'd be great to sort of hear Franklin's experience doing that. So I'll hand over to him.
Hello, people. My name is Franklin, and as you can see from the screen, I am here to present my coding bootcamp story with some advice and some tips to make your coding bootcamp more successful. A little bit about myself. I'm from Uganda, and I currently work for Ericsson as a telecom engineer. So with that brief introduction, I think I'll just jump straight in. About a month ago, I just completed the Ray Winderlich Bootcamp. This bootcamp was part of the Ray Winderlich Community Care Initiative, started in May 2020, which is basically a series of projects designed for people who want to take advantage of any extra downtime during the lockdown to improve their mobile development skills or connect with other developers or further their career. In my case, the country's lockdown because of the current situation provided me the time frame to be able to attend this bootcamp. So some more story. About 40 students were selected from 500 applications. This was from different parts of the world. And for the 40 students, we were then given the scholarship to attend the bootcamp itself. And if you're wondering where I am on the map, I'm that small green dot in the center. That's where I am. Which one? Start. Okay. Okay, you can see this. Okay, let me start again. Is that fresh or I just go ahead? Okay, can you see this slide now? Okay, Do you see the second slide now? This is strange. Just 1 second. Do you see the second slide now? What is going on? You can see the keynote, right? You can see keynote and you can see my notes.
I think it's his desktop background we can see.
Oh, man. I shared the wrong thing. Switch screen window.
A common problem with.
Yes, 1 second. I was trying to. Could you see the? Okay, maybe I can do this. Now, can you see this?
Problem that Slack has as well, where it can't capture anything above the.
Okay. Now, can you see this now? Just the background of the desktop. That's what you're seeing. Just 1 second.
Try resharing your screen in Skype, Franklin.
Stop sharing. The only option to share is LCD desktop color seal. That's what I'm seeing. I share screen. Okay. You should be seeing yourselves.
No. Usually this requires a restart of Skype or Slack or.
Okay.
Everybody seems to like it.
Okay, I'm back in. Do you see now what I'm sharing? How do I do this? Switch screen or window? I'm sharing the whole screen. Because right now I'm sharing the presentation. Is there something missing, like a setting? Just 1 second.
You might want to double check Skype has got the right permissions and preferences that it can actually share screen.
Yeah, we fixed this yesterday. You can see my preferences? Oh man, screen recording, shit. Okay.
Now we can.
Okay, can you see now yourself? Okay, now you can see yourself? Okay.
Now it is working perfectly.
Now it's working perfectly. Just screen recording permissions. Great. You can now see the slide? Okay, you can now see the presentation?
A lot more sense now.
sorry. Okay, I didn't know about that. All right, now you didn't see anything. Okay, I'll just start from the beginning. No problem. Okay, count me down. Okay, apologies for that. Those were technical difficulties beyond my control. So I'll start the presentation from the beginning. So hello people, my name is Franklin, and as you can see from the screen, I'm here to present my coding bootcamp story with some advice and tips on how to make your bootcamp experience more successful. A little bit about myself. I'm from Uganda, and I'm an engineer currently working for Ericsson as a telecom engineer. So I'm going to give a bit of backstory as to the bootcamp. So about a month ago, I completed the Ray Winderlich bootcamp. This was part of the Ray Winderlich Community Care Initiative, which started in May 2020, which is basically a series of projects designed for those who want to take advantage of extra downtime to improve their mobile development skills or connect with other developers or further their career. In my case, my country's lockdown provided me the free time so that I could attend this particular bootcamp. 40 students were selected from various countries. Out of 500 applications, the 40 students were then given scholarships to attend the bootcamp. If you're wondering where I am, I'm in the center of the map at that particular location. Our weekly schedule consisted of mainly 2 days of Zoom sessions, 2 days of watching video courses, and 3 days of working on a weekly assignment. The live sessions were run by Audrey, and Audrey was kind enough to invite a lot of other special guests such as Jamabalo, Jin Jang, and Matt Gallagher, and also Ashton Williams and Gio Lodi. So I would like to now present or discuss some 8 tips for attending a bootcamp. I'm going to divide them into 3 phases: before the bootcamp, during the bootcamp, and after the bootcamp. So tip number 1, research the bootcamp. The first tip is to research the learning style. You need to check that your learning style is in line with the bootcamp's curriculum. In my case, my learning style is video courses, so it was very much in line with the bootcamp that I had selected. Number 2, check the cost. Check if there are any loans or scholarships that are provided, because bootcamps are terribly expensive nowadays. Number 3, check the success rate for job placements. Assuming this is the reason why you joined the bootcamp, you need to know that after the bootcamp, will you be able to place into a job that you like? Number 4 is check the timing check the timing of the bootcamp to see if it matches with your schedule. Is it full-time, part-time, or self-paced? So you need to find a bootcamp that works within the schedule. Tip number 2 is find your why. Understand what you're taking on. Bootcamps are time intensive, so remember that nobody is forcing you to get this work done all the time. So you need a clarity of purpose as to why you are doing this. Are you doing this for a job? Are you doing this for a hobby? Because bootcamps are not normally for the curious. Tip number 3 is prep work. You need to do some prep work before you attend their bootcamp. Use free resources online, such as, for me, iOS, it was Ray Winderlich, Hacking with Swift, and various YouTube videos and podcasts. Another thing that you need to do is get comfortable with Git and GitHub. Learning Git before the bootcamp allowed me to try out new ideas, break things, and if things didn't work, I could quickly revert back to my original code. Tip number 4 is learning the pattern. So learn how to break down problems into small, achievable tasks. Learn how to spot patterns such as singletons, MVC, MVVM, or delegates and protocols. All right, because at the end of the day, programming is mostly patterns repeated over and over with different business logic. So study old problems, learn the patterns, and try to implement them. Keep practicing those problems. Tip number 5, don't be shy. Be social, make friends, partner up, interact with friends and other students. Offer to help any of your fellow students who are still struggling, because the best way to learn is to teach. Remember that you do not know what you do not know. So you should be able to leave your ego at the door, because everyone enters the bootcamp at different levels. Ask questions, even when you think they're dumb, because most likely you're not the only student with that question. This gives you a chance to bond with your peers, and if you're lucky, these relationships will continue even after the bootcamp is completed. Tip number 6, avoid burnout. Sleep, exercise, and healthy eating. Because of the intensity of the bootcamp, you need to actively avoid burnout. Take care of yourself, especially sleep, which is so important. I myself wasn't doing a lot of sleeping, so that tended to affect me towards as the bootcamp came to an end. So you need to actively avoid burnout. Tip number 7, don't stop. This is after the bootcamp. Keep building, keep learning, and try to keep the momentum after the bootcamp is done. Stay in touch with your peers when the bootcamp is completed. And for my last tip, tip number 8, it's a bit of an opposite of tip number 7, but maintain a healthy momentum. If you're feeling burnout, take a break after the bootcamp. You don't have to keep the momentum that you had started. So in summary, my tips were: research the bootcamp, find your why, do the prep work, learn the patterns, don't be shy, avoid burnout, don't stop the momentum. Take a break if you need it. Thank you for listening. You can reach me on Twitter via my Twitter handle shown on the screen. Over to you, Sean.
All right. Great. Thanks, Franklin, for that. A little bit of a technical hitch there at the start, but he was a trooper and got through that. We figured out the problem and was plain sailing from there. But great recovery, Franklin, and great to hear your experience of doing the boot camp. In particular, I think a lot of people on the Slack channel were really impressed with the lineup of Melbourne-based people who helped with that boot camp with Audrey, and it's great to see a lot of local representation there. So that was fantastic. Now we've got Oliver Jones coming up. He's going to tell us a little bit about this tool that we call the App Store Connect CLI. One of the great things about organising a meetup like this is if you run a company, you can force your employees to do talks. So that's what I did here, and I'm sure Oliver was grinding his teeth when I said I'd like you to do a presentation on this, but actually we've been working on this for quite a while. Oliver will go into some of the background. It's still a work in progress, but I thought it'd be really great to sort of show the rest of the community where we're at with this. So I'll hand over to Oliver.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thanks, Sean, for suggesting that I do a talk on the App Store CLI tool that we've been building. What you can see here on the screen is the GitHub page for this tool. It's a completely open source project that Itty Bitty Apps has been building. And from the README, you can find out what it is. And basically, it is supposed to be an easy-to-use command line tool for interacting with the App Store Connect API from the command line. So I think it was a couple of years ago, Apple brought us the App Store Connect API, which is a RESTful API for interacting with App Store Connect. Originally, it was pretty limited. It's mainly supported test flight operations, but with the Worldwide Developer Conference 2020, they opened all of the capabilities of the App Store Connect platform to their API. So you can now pretty much do everything with the API. Now, we started building the App Store Connect CLI before WW20, so we don't support, the tool doesn't support all of the APIs yet, just a subset of them, mostly the subset that existed before WW 2020. Now, you might be asking, why would you want this? Well, that's a good question. It's really just there to help with automation. So in our day-to-day work with building apps, we want to be able to do things with the App Store every now and again. And you can go in there and you can poke buttons, and that's actually relatively efficient. But sometimes you want to be able to automate certain repetitive actions. Might be downloading provisioning profiles, for example, during your CI process. So we wanted to do that. Now, you might also be asking, well, I can do that stuff with Fastlane. Fastlane's been around a long time, and it supports a whole bunch of App Store Connect functionality. And you'd be right, you could do that with Fastlane. And historically, we would have probably done that with Fastlane. But part of the reason for building this project was actually to try and stop using Fastlane. Personally, and maybe others share the opinion that we should be building tools in our own tool chain, building tools that are native to our platform. And that's what I wanted to do with this initiative of building this tool. Part of the problem with using tools like Fastlane and CocoaPods is that it is dependency on tooling that is somewhat deprecated on the Mac platform, being Ruby. And it also diverts our attention away from our platform's actual native tooling, such as Swift Package Manager and so on. So people invest a lot of effort and energy into tools that aren't actually core to our development experience. And it would be better, I think, personally, if we directed more energy towards the tooling that was open source and part of our actual platform. So that's part of the reason for it. As you can see from the README on the project, it's relatively easy to install with Brew. You can also install it with Mint, and eventually we'll have pre-built binaries that you can download. But for the moment, we'll use Brew. Now, I've already installed the tool on my system using Brew, and so I'm going to switch to the actual command line and just give you a bit of a demo of some of the ways in which you can use it and like how you set it up. So I have it installed with Brew, so I can just type ASC and it prints out its help. Now I'm going to try and list all the bundle IDs that we have associated with something. So I can do ASC bundle ID, bundle IDs list. Now, if I do that here, I'm getting this cryptic error message. Now, there's a little bit of setup, which if you read the README, you'll learn how to do. And that is that you actually have to create an API key with the App Store Connect platform in order for you to use the tool. Now, I've already done that in the past. I've gone here into the App Store Connect, and I've gone to the users and access area, and in here keys, and I've gone and created a key. Now I've downloaded that key. It only offers you it gives you one chance to download the key. I've downloaded the key, and I've recorded these bits and pieces of information. That is, you need the issuer ID and the key ID. So if I go back to my terminal here, I've actually conveniently created a little iba.n file here, which has those two items in there, and using fish, I will set those in the environment. And the other thing you need to do is in this directory here, you need to put the key that you downloaded, and it has to match the file name that you've downloaded. So this is the key ID over here. Anyway, the information on how to do that, again, I said, is in the README, but it's also actually in the help. If you look at the help, it tells you here in the top section under how you provide the key ID and the issuer ID to the commands. It can read it either from the command line or from the environment, and it assumes the environment if you don't specify it. So anyway, we'll get started with some things. So now that I have looked at the help and looked at my list, I can actually go and list the bundle IDs on my account or on the BBD Apps account. I will do that. Just readjust my screen a little bit so you can all see it. Yeah, and unfortunately I've upped the font so the layout here is a bit wrapped around. It's very good when you have a very ultra wide screen like I do on my other screen. One of the things to also note, however, is you can output the data in different formats. So you can output it in CSV. You can output it in JSON, which is a horrible blob without any pretty printing. And you can also output it in YAML. And so these different outputs are really useful if you want to save the data out for importing into another tool or for scripting. And I'll have an example of how you can use something like JQ to get at specific bits of info a bit later on. Anyway, moving on. The other things that a lot of these commands have, if you look at the help, there's a lot of filter operations. So you can do things like filter based on the name of or filter of an identifier for a particular app. So internally at IBA, we have a little app we've been playing around with, hasn't been released yet, called Roadrunner, somewhat associated with Sean's fascination with driving cars faster and around racing tracks. And I've just filtered out all of the other IDs here with a simple filter. What other sort of things can we do? Well, I could as part of my process of development, maybe I want to create a new app. So I can register a new app. I can register a CocoaHeads demo app in the portal, and it's registered it with the API. So if I'll prove that it worked. Where are we? Actually, the developer, not App Store. So, bundle IDs. Where are we? Identifiers. Oops. There we are. CocoaHeads demo. See, worked. Anyway, what are the and maybe I'm not so keen about creating a CocoaHeads demo app, so I'm going to delete that. I'll delete that bundle ID. One of the really useful things that you can do with this, and that's actually what I use it for on a couple of apps that we're building, is downloading provisioning profiles. So one of the things that is a little bit annoying about provisioning profiles is they get invalidated or various other things, and so and you have to have them obviously installed in the right place to build your app on your CI server. And if you use something like GitHub Actions or any of the other sort of software as a service CI platforms, those machines, they're fresh. It's a fresh VM image every time you do a build. So you've got to install the keys and your certificates and your keys and your provisioning profiles correctly before you run your build, or otherwise Xcode is not going to work very well. So one of the commands we have here is ASC profiles list. Well, my history is spoiling the surprise. Anyway, and so we have a profile here. Now, this is a bit weird. I'm like, oh, here we have this not actually happening Mac App Store version of Reveal's provisioning profile, but I'm like, well, no, Roadrunner. I've been building and running the Roadrunner app in Xcode, and it's all been working, and it's got its provisioning profile. Why is it not showing up? Where's Xcode gone? Xcode. Roadrunner workspace. There we go. So Roadrunner uses a Xcode managed profile, and you'll notice that if you go into the App Store Connect interface, that they never show up under profiles, and that's the same on the command line here. The tool, when we fetch data from the API, it doesn't show the profiles, the Xcode managed profile, which is a bit frustrating. But what I learned by poking around in the App Store Connect API is that you can get them. You just have to get them in a different way. So we have another command as part of the App Store Connect CLI, which lists by bundle ID, which lets you fetch the provisioning profiles of a specific application based on its bundle ID. And now if we list that there, they show up. Now we have the iTunes team provisioning profile for the app, both for iOS development and the App Store. And that obviously is just listing them, but I can download them as well. And now it's downloaded them, put them in the current directory. But that's not very useful. What we really want to do is download them into library mobile devices provisioning profiles. So if we're on a CI server, we can run this command as part of our CI pipeline and actually pull down the provisioning profiles, put them in the right place, and they're just ready to go. And if I onboard a new device or I onboard a new user into my automatic signing project, or automatically managed project, everything just works. I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, just another little tip, obviously, as I was saying before, you can output the data as JSON, but that gives you a screen full of noise. So what you really want to be able to do is fetch other bits of data out of it. So you might want to use a tool like JQ, which lets you do things like run these it has its own little query language. If you're not familiar with JQ, it's a very interesting tool to learn. But it lets you essentially do things like, here I'm deleting the profile content out of the JSON response, if I do it right. Mistyped things. So now I can see the JSON data without the profile content, or if I want to see other specific pieces of information, I can do things like, I'm just interested in the UUID field or something out of the returned results. Anyway, JQ is very useful for using this or interpreting the output or the JSON formatted output, so you can pipe data from one command into the other and script it using a bash script, which is how you get kind of the power of using the APIs, by calling multiple different endpoints or different commands one after another. And that's exactly what one of our contributors has been doing. We've got a few contributors, mostly from IBA, but we've had one or two outside contributors, and in particular, Chris Jones here appears to be using the App Store Connect CLI tool with Ansel, which is a automation platform for configuring computers. And I think he's using it to help automate the configuration of a build farm. What else? So just really finish off by wrapping up. These tools like this only get better by actually having humans use them. We're really interested in having more people try and use a tool like this in their workflows if they have a need or want to do something interesting with it. So have a look, have a go. If the tool doesn't do what you need it to do, then we're very happy to accept pull requests and suggestions and issues, and we can maybe make the app better and more useful as time goes on. But that's all I had really for today. I hope people find it useful. Back to you, Sean.
All right, thanks, Oliver, for that recap and review of App Store Connect CLI. As Oliver mentioned, it's only going to get better if everybody sort of chips in, and I'd encourage people to go check it out. And if it does things you need, that's fantastic. But even better, if you find an area or an API that's not yet supported, please chip in and help to make the whole product better. Now, we're going to head over to Rob now. I do want to mention Rob's behind the scenes is a little bit like the Wizard of Oz at the moment, behind the curtains, making sure everything happens behind the scenes. And right at this point, Rob's going to do a talk. So he's a little bit like that one-man band who's got the piano accordion and the drum banging and the cymbals at the back. So I hope all this works. Rob, I'm sure you got it under control, but I'll throw over to you, Rob, and tell us a little bit about Vexology. Cheers.
Hello. Thank you, Sean. So as Sean mentioned, I'm doing something a little bit different tonight. I have about 1,000 windows open, so much to the point that my presenter notes are actually handwritten because I just don't have enough screen real estate. You can also see I've got my lovely headset on because my MacBook is working so hard that if I used a normal mic, all you would hear would be the fans. I think they're just spinning up again now that the camera's on. So yeah, as Sean mentioned, I'm normally behind the scenes running this sort of thing. So when the opportunity to present came up, and faced with the prospect that Keynote just kind of takes over your entire screen and you can't actually see what's going on, so I'd lose access to what's going on with the stream and everything else, I thought I'd take the opportunity to do something a little bit different. So let's start the different. And this may work well, this may look fantastic, it may also backfire spectacularly. So let me shuffle over this way a little bit and bring up my first slide. First slide. So this talk is about vexillology, but for all of those flag aficionados tuning in, I'm really sorry, it's not actually about physical flags and their design or creation. It's more about feature flags, feature toggles, specifically building them into Swift in the modern world. But first, a little bit of background. Let's go to my second slide. I'm Rob, also known as Bok, pretty much everywhere. I've done enough of these presentations over the last few years for this user group and various user groups that I probably should have a YouTube channel by now. But until then, you can find me at Bok_ on Twitter, or at Bok on Slack and most other platforms. First page of notes done. Nope. We have our first thing. Missing my second page of notes. Anyway. Yeah, that's weird. Anyway. So I'm a iOS contractor or a consultant, however you want to phrase that. I've picked up my first contract back in, I think it was about 2014, a short-term gig to look at some core data threading issues. That was a fun one. And I've been pretty much doing, between 6 and 12-month contracts or 2-year contracts sometimes since then. And I don't say that to try and, beef up my credentials or anything. I just wanted to put out there that I've seen a lot of code bases. And I know that pretty much one constant that's every code base I've ever worked on is eventually they try to roll their own flag solution. Almost nobody ever takes one off the shelf, even though there are some good ones that are coming up now. But it's usually they roll their own, usually some combination of the settings plist with user defaults and a few other things, maybe a JSON file sitting in the cloud somewhere. So it just gets a bit cumbersome sometimes. So when my current contract actually started going down the same path, they started making noises about feature flags and stuff as well. I had coincidentally been working on am I supposed to be on my next slide? No. So when my current contract started working on coming up with these noises again, I decided that this time it was a good opportunity to take a step back and build something that was open source. And then so that when I inevitably move on to the next role, I can bring it with me when they then ask for it again. And want to build yet another feature flag solution that I couldn't take with me. So coincidentally, around the same time, I had just been working on the some command line tools similar to what Oliver just demoed, built using Swift argument parser. And it's really the confluence of those two things that is what made this possible and what made this happen. So, third slide. I've decided to name a little package called Vexel. And it is by far the best named open source product I've ever started. All the other my names I've got are usually pretty bad. This one is pretty good. So if we move on to the next one then. So just a quick look at Swift argument parser. I was really blown away by how simple this syntax is. Like you can see that it is really just a simple struct that describes the command line arguments that you want to bring in. And then it's just a property wrapper that describes the command line argument itself, plus its definition. And that's really easy to read, really easy to understand. And then the best of all, at runtime, that just gets populated with the values that you're expecting. So there's very, very simple and straightforward. And that's really where this came from. So, there's my second page. Yeah, thanks. So, all right, let's get away from my notes for a bit. And let's hope this works if I go into Xcode. All right, so I've got a very quick demo app that I've put together for this. Let's bring that up. So it's a very simple weather app that I've nicknamed Mammoth. And that's really basically it. It pulls in the current weather for each location, the weather icon, and then you can drill in and get a little bit more info. I did intend to flesh this out a little bit more for the presentation, but kind of ran out of time on that. But that's it. So it's a nice quick demo app. So you can see that my design skills leave a lot to be desired with my perfectly black and white layout with black icons and everything. So if we were to say that, these icons are a work in progress, they should probably be behind a feature flag so that they don't interrupt the user experience at the moment. So let's go and do that. We'll bring in Vexel. Now, for those of you who played with Swift Package Manager before, I didn't want to spend the next half an hour of this demo waiting for Xcode to finish resolving its package dependencies. So I've already included Vexel into the project. So if we just go, and it's exactly what we just saw with Swift Argument Parser. if we bring in the so we import Vexel into our feature flags, and then I'm pretty sure it's flag cont. We create a flag container, and we'll call it feature flags. And then inside we just add our flag definition. So we say flag. We want a default for these show icons to be false. We ask that we always have to put in a description of what the flag is, not only for yourself, but for future you who comes back and needs to understand what the bounds of this flag is, what its intent, how much is actually involved in it. We say controls whether well, let's not say that, whether the icons appear in the summary view, and we'll call it show icons, and it's going to be a boolean. But it doesn't have to be boolean. It's using generics all the way down, so it could be anything we're looking for. In this case, let's add one as well. The show-stopping demo that I've done for this before is always switching the entire app from light mode to dark mode, so why not do that? So we can use autocomplete. Let's go in and set that to color scheme. And then for now, we'll make our default auto. We'll say the description is forces the app into a specific color scheme, e.g. light, dark mode, and we'll call that color scheme. And that's literally it. That's all we need to do to define some feature flags. All right, but to actually use those feature flags, we need to run them up a flagpole. So everything in Vexel works off a flagpole, the concept of a flagpole. And if we just click through to that, you can see we specialize the flagpole with a flag container. So we've just set up our feature flags flag container. And I like to put in a type alias for this so that I don't have to type flagpole with feature flags all the time. In this case, I'll call it flag service. And then the other thing that we need to do is set up an instance of that flag service. So for the sake of demo brevity, and we're not going to get into arguments about dependency injection on this stream, just going to set up a quick singleton that hoists our feature flags. Now we can access them from anywhere. It's probably one of the few cases where a singleton is probably warranted, but I'll leave that to your ideological wars. So now that we have our flag service, we need to actually start using our flag service. So if we go to our summary view model, which is the view model for each of the rows, we can see we have already set up a published property that we're using to decide whether we show or hide the image. We'll go back to where that was. What we want to do is, instead of defaulting that to true, we want to set it to be our flag service dot shared build for me Xcode. I need my autocomplete. And then we can see we've got some properties on that, and this is just using dynamic member lookup to map that the structure down. So we say show icons, and that's it. That's all we need to do to actually consume that flag. Where am I? Dun, dun, dun. Cool. So if I build and run that again, we can see that the icon is gone from that, so our feature flag is working. And if I go just to prove that it's not trickery, or it could still be trickery, I guess this could just be a recording. We'll go and change that to true, rerun that, and it's back. Nice and easy. Let's change that default back before I forget. So one of the focuses of Vexel, and this is especially important in the Swift UI world, where everything's declarative and expected to update the tree in real time, is we do actually support full real-time lookup of flags. So what we can do is I've set a nice little setup bindings method here. And if I go, where are we? Summary bindings. So we can actually access the projected property of the icon, which is actually maps into the flag itself. That's not really good from a zoom perspective. But then you can access the publisher on that flag, receive that on the main loop because we're good, and we can then drive that straight into our show icons piece. If we look at, we need to do that for our color scheme property as well. So it's the same deal. We get our color scheme, we receive it on the main loop, we map it into a native value because SwiftUI doesn't like working with that enum properly, and then we just assign it into our publisher. And that's it. So that's done. What am I? 5. Yep. Content bindings. Yep. So now we have real-time updating of those flags. To make this really impressive demo, I should probably go in and add 100 more flags, but that would get really messy in here. Like, you don't want to have this be 1,000 lines long and then have to autocomplete everything all the way through. So much like Swift Argument Parser supports nested commands, we also support flag groups. So we could go in, and instead of having that at the top level, we could say, have a flag group that has flags related to the summary rows, and we could put all of our flags in there. So we call that summary, say, whoops, 2 M's, and that'll be summary flags type. So if I look at the summary flags type, you can see here's one that I've prepared earlier. It's pretty much the same all the way down, just a flag container. We also have a detail screen in the app, so let's go and add that too. Not a flag, flag group. Flags related to the detail screen. Call that detail, and we'll call that detail flags. Again, same deal. You can see here as well that we can have integers set up in the summary flags. Sorry guys, I forgot to hide the simulator again. Here we go. Cool, so we've got detail flags. That won't build and run though, because that now has out-of-date options. So I need to update this. And the same as we had before, it's just the summary is there, and then you can use the flag directly from that. So it just updates the key path on that. That would be summary as well. Now while we're here, we should probably map in our detail view. We can see that this hasn't been set up yet, so flag service.share.detail.show icons. And what's this one? Show feels like? Not that one. That one. And then we'll set up the binding for that so we can update it in real time. Cool, so we can now drive everything on that. Everything's up to date. Yep. So this is where things get really good. Most existing flag solutions, as I mentioned before, usually store something in the settings plist that you might conditionally include in, say, a development build or an internal testing build. But that means that the barrier of entry for adding additional flags is kind of high. Like, you've got to, if you say you have a feature toggle class, you might add a property on that which maps to a user default. And so you need to set all that up, and then you need to go into the settings plist and add the mapping there, and then hope you've got the spelling consistent across them all. It's a bit cumbersome, and it raises the barrier to actually creating new flags. And one of the things we wanted to do with Vexel was the barrier is one line. You define that flag, and you can use it and edit it, and everything is there. So to do that, Vexel actually will generate its own flag editing UI in SwiftUI. So let's go in and add that. Let's say you wanted to add a super secret button to your app itself, which I really don't recommend because you probably shouldn't be shipping this with your app. But let's say, I'll bring the simulator back for a sec. So let's say we wanted to add just a button in the top right-hand corner. That's like a settings button. Add the simulator away. Let's go in here and we'll say content button. Come on. So we've just added a button to the navigation bar that toggles the show settings state up the top. It has the little gear SF image set up. We obviously need to add now that we're going to show the settings, we want to show the settings just as a typical modal content sheet. So very quick modal that uses the binding of the show settings tool to show the navigation view with this stuff in it. And then all we actually need to do is Vexel also ships with a second module called Vexelographer, which is the person who designs flags. We're editing flags, so this is pretty close. We say Vexelographer, and then we need to initialize that with the flagpole. So we have our flag source flag service for that. So shared, and we need to tell which flag value source we're editing. So in this case, it's user defaults, the standard user defaults. And that's all we need then to build an entire editing interface. So if we build and run that, cool. So our Mammoth is back. You can see our little edit gear icon in the top corner with our secret settings section, which is not really that secret. But we can go in there and we can say, cool, in the summary, you'll see that we have the description that you've entered. So bring that back up over here. The description that you've entered. And if we toggle that on and then dismiss that, you'll see that our flags have updated in real time because we use the publisher to map it into the observable object. So SwiftUI re-rendered that view. And we now have the icons back. Let's go and turn that off for now. We can also, as we saw before, we can use the color scheme. Now, our color scheme definition is just an enum. You probably can't see that behind the sim. So our color scheme definition is just an enum. It's a case iterable enum, which means that Vexelographer is able to generate a UI for that. In which case, it just generates a standard picker that you can go in and say, hey, let's switch everything to dark mode. It switches everything to dark mode. So one of the things that we also support is a little info button that you can see. Now, what most flag providers or specialty flag outlets don't want you to know is that, well, they probably don't care. But most flag solutions it's just a key value store. You have a string key and you have a value that's attached to it, and that can go into any database anywhere, really. And so Vexel is no different. We generate a key for each property, and then we have the description that you see so that a tester can read the description of the flag and what where the flag applies to and all of that sort of stuff without having to come back and ask you about it. You can see the current value of that in the user defaults.standard because that's what we're editing. We can clear the value in the current source, and this becomes particularly important when you look at the source hierarchy, because Vexel supports a hierarchy of different sources. So you can see that it's dark because the top one says it's dark. If I do it to clear that, we can see that it's gone back to the default value now. And you could insert any number of ones in there. In fact, you can insert quite a few. So this is I don't say a fairly typical setup, but you can have a local snapshot where you've overridden things. You could have the user defaults, so you've got local testing going on. You might have an environment selector that lets you, say you've got a test environment or a pre-production environment or a production environment. You could have different configurations that are automatically updated in that. And then you might have a remote flag provider like Firebase Remote Config or something like that. And then it comes back to the default values. And it's literally just walks the array and returns the first non-nil value that's in there to decide what that value of that flag is at any one time. So if I close that off again, if we go back to simulator still up, good. Let me just clear this out because this is a problem that I always forget to do. Now, that's all well and good, but we really recommend that you don't put finish that page. Cool, I'm going well with my notes. So we really recommend that you don't put the Vexelographer stuff inside your shipping app. Obviously you then have to limit when and where it can be included, who has access to it, all of that sort of stuff. Instead, it's actually really easy using app groups to ship it as a separate app. So the same app groups that you use to, let me kill off the simulator again. Wish it did that automatically for me. The same the same capabilities that you use to talk to your extensions, like a Today extension or a widget, if that's what you're building. You just configure your app with a app group entitlement and the name of the app group, and then you can create a second app. In this case, I've created a second app called Sloth, because everybody who's seen Ice Age knows that Mammoth's are friends with Sloth. They both share the same app group here. And then if we actually go into our app group configuration, to access the user defaults that are stored in that app group, you just copy that same app group name into your suite name. Which means now that we could go into our flag service, we can pass in our sources, and it just takes an array of sources. By default, it's just the user defaults.standard. So if this time we'll go user defaults.appgroup. And now if I rerun Mammoth now, actually that's not going to show you anything. Let's run Sloth instead. So if I go to that and I run Sloth, cool, you can see we've now got Sloth. Sloth, the code behind Sloth itself is literally just the same navigation view list inside of it, and the vexillographer thing, which I think you can see. Yep, literally just the same vexillographer setup that's inside our source. It just has the app group source instead of the other one, which reminds me I should update that over here too. So we can change this stuff in our second app group, just as we did in the other one. Dun, 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 dun. Then if we rerun Mammoth, we can see our weather icon is back. And we can have a look here and see that it is coming from the not standard user defaults. So that means that you could, for example, ship your production app as normal to the App Store. But then when you could also ship your secondary app, the settings app, whatever you want to call it, via test flight to specific users. And then the two can share their feature toggle. So you can use the secondary app to edit the primary app's feature toggles. So, and that's also good for not putting your secret stuff inside the app itself. Cool. And so there's one last thing that I wanted to demo. The real-time feature flag support inside Vexel is fun, but it's not just for fun. There's some really good stuff that you can actually do with it, depending on if you get a remote flag provider like Firebase Remote Config. You could set up push notifications so that it automatically updates the values of the flags on your device. So there was one service that I've used before called LaunchDarkly. This is a paid service. Just move that over there. It's a paid service, and it's probably more on the enterprise level than it is a hobbyist tool. But they do have a 30-day trial, which makes for a fantastic demo in this case. So you can see that if I bring the simulator back for just a sec, so you can see that if I go into the summary, the show icons one, we've got the summary.showIcons key here. So if I just set that up in LaunchDarkly as well, I can now, but first, before I go into that, I need to actually go in and add it. So I added LaunchDarkly provides an iOS SDK, and I've gone and added the support for it to Vexel. And to do that, there's a very simple protocol. All we really need to provide is the name of the flag value source, which is what we put into Vexillographer. And then it's a getter, a setter, and if you want to support real time, a publisher. And that's literally all that you need to provide additional whatever your key value stories that you want to support, like Firebase Remote Config, DynamoDB, SQL database, if that's what you're after. It's really just up to you. Very simple to provide. So I've done that for LaunchDarkly. So if I add that in as a secondary one, what's it called again? LaunchDarkly. That's right. So just add that in. And let's rerun Mammoth now. If we go in, we can see that. It'd be helpful if I bring the window back up. we can see that the show icons summary Launch Darkly has it as false, which, hello, zoom in. So we can see that's false. So it's pulling those down from Launch Darkly now. So if I clear that, we go back to that home screen. So in Mammoth now, if I were to come into Launch Darkly and turn this feature toggle on, pretty much straight away it's now set up and it's pushed out. So anybody who has the app open gets it in real time. I could go crazy with my favorite demo and just set everyone on the planet to dark mode. And it just updates. We're not mean though, so we'll turn that off. And that's it. That's everything that I've got. Right, so where's that button? Come back to me. So that's it. This is, as I said at the start, it's an open source project, probably one of the better ones that I've built, actually. It's very well documented and it's very well tested. Available on GitHub at that URL there. I can never do this. No, this way. There we go, that URL there. I'll paste the link in Slack as well. And that's it. I'll be around for a while tonight if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, back to you, Sean.
All right, thanks for that, Rob. Now, it's been a while since I've written any code at all. I think a lot of you will agree that I haven't been anywhere near code for quite a number of years, but seeing Rob do that presentation just got me really excited. I know what a feature flag is, and Rob pretty much covered every base there. As I was thinking, he should have groups, and he had groups, and then he should do declarative UI. He had declarative UI. He should have a web thing. He had that as well. So pretty much covered all the bases. Absolutely amazing job, Rob. So congratulations on that. That framework is really, really impressive. And as I said in the Slack group there, I'm sure Apple will have a rip-off for DubDub next year. With that, I think we'll move on to the wrap-up comments. Thanks again for coming. Thanks for tuning in. 3 really amazing talks. I'd just like to thank Bob Franklin and Oliver again for spending time to put together the content for tonight's presentations. Of course, you can reach us at all these different channels, the website, Meetup, Slack, Twitter, and YouTube. Coming up, we've got another virtual event, actually. It's CocoaHeads Hack Night, and it's going to be a virtual event over Discord. I think Luke Tupper's organising this one. You'll be able to share your screen and share your work or get some help from people if you've got a project that you'd like a little bit of help with or a second set of eyes on. That's coming up on the 16th of September at 6 o'clock. So, if you're interested to participate in that, I'd really encourage you to get along and meet some more people. Again, it's amazing that even with stage 4 lockdown, that it can still really feel like a tight community, and that everybody can continue kind of doing what they really love doing. So get along to that Hack Night if you can. The next CocoaHeads event is coming up on the 8th of October. And with that, I guess we'll leave it to you. Happy coding, and look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.